From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart, does make, and thus possess a soul of its own from the sound. A wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here today with me present. Day 275. This is like 7 pages, from pages 678 to 84 out of 850 pages out of my book, TheSovereignLight, A Course in Metaphysical Spirituality. And here we are, out in the open, in the great white north. And my name is Reverend Maria Arvanitidis. How do you do? What a beautiful, sunny Sunday. And whenever you're ready, choose this moment to be a free time that you can make out of your day to devote perhaps 3/4 of an hour or perhaps 30 minutes if I don't start it with any of my storytelling samples and examples. And this affirmation, today's activation, you can find exclusively on TikTok or in the many samples that I have given on YouTube, Love's Creation Unlimited, or you can join me on Patreon. And my creator's name is capital R, small m, capital A. And I will be starting to upload again. It's been a while on there. What I'd like to do is complete this every day's episode for each lesson. This is an audiovisual version of my book. And you can find this online anywhere. Indigo, Walmart. So when I'm finally completed, I will have a complete package for you to purchase of all these videos and to do with your guide, of course, if you would like. With the book, it guides you through it. And so you can find that on Alchemist Rama, that's Maria Arvanitidis, Reverend Maria Arvanitidis. And you can find this on my blog spot, the TheSovereignLight Ministries blog spot. Any packages that are there at the moment, feel free to purchase. And let's begin. Take a nice deep breath in. Just kind of take this all in. So what are we taking in besides all the downloads of this photonic light that I'm sharing with you in your field? Can you feel it? Can you feel the silence? Can you feel that sinking in feeling, in touch with that peaceful, place? And with every breath in, just feel the ground. And absorb from the blue, blue sky into this heart space center and that stillness from within. Breathe it out and hold the space of resonance that we shall share with each other here in this moment, in the now. So, what is a plasma being? the most visible electromagnetic spectrum that are refracted to deflect and even illuminate, like the moon when the sun hits it. These are the photons, these photonic light, this photonic light, the soul of the spirit. And the makeup for this thing called plasma. So unlike the atom particles, a photon can only be partial, holding frequency, momentum within a plasma dimension, and sovereign from the influence of mass. You just ever find that we're here in this moment to experience the silence, and it always takes just that one differential to why are they here? To make the noise, to disrupt just put like a tear in the sky like they do with chemtrails, to detach the spirit from the soul. Only a lost soul would be doing that, crying out for help. To tear into the earth and frack it while polluting the primary water, and then the guilt bewilders it to make it up in its own version, its synthetic makeup of its own creation. Not cooperating, rather in disharmony with creation. This is what we get. And this is why we come out into the wilderness, into the nature of things, and synchronize our rhythm that's offset by all the other bombastic infiltrations of wounded children crying out in that they call a weapon. And all it does is it distorts our reality. And so it's up to us. We don't have to be a part of that. And so let's begin with this and find the origin of source. Whenever you're ready, you can say these words out loud with me. Sounds good. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart, does make, and thus possess a soul of its own from the sound. A wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. So here it is, life. Subatomic particles, waveforms, are pieces of information that come in as photons, and that when a certain sound or vibrational intention will and can impress upon or have diffuse from the impression of light are exactly what the plasma fields are made of. To simplify in layman's terms, the soul plasma is all the memory, including oversoul plasma, and that the self has acquired through its lineage everything it could possibly imagine on record. The higher self plasma holds all of this, its consciousness, and could say that they are one in the same. Within this plasma consciousness that the soul plasma can only but a sliver show It will spin from different realities and of the 7 plasmic bodies from its chakras too. And going on to page 679, from primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart, does make, thus possess a soul of its own from the sound. A wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. The plasma is clean. It is a clean matrix with no memory, and from this magnetic ionization, it will hold the soul and spirit matter, antimatter, and dark matter, and the spaces in between. It's also described in biology with cytoplasmic substances and from within the cell as well as within the bloodstream. The bloodstream is a good example from where the white and red blood cells are described, however, leaving out the dark, unseen, and within the spaces in between these dark blood cells. Well, in Greek, plasma, it translates to creature, and from it all the contained creation entered into resonate. Can you hear it? It is a chargeless space, the source from where the soul and spirit can be found. It is the holograph that holds dark light and white light, plasma being a 0-point field, and where particles are mixed together and they create an ionic magnetic separation to distinctly identify the atom cell from is sovereign. Everything it is not, all the other static that it is not. Plasma is the antimatter and matter that created the spark of its eternal light, spirit, consciousness. This is this thing, the North Star that we try to connect with, the spark. The magnetic fields create the filaments, encasements in truth. They are the motionless components of an idea. Electromagnetic, that must have the breath, the soul of life awareness impressed upon it to infuse with plasmic force and collapse it into matter. And this north node that we follow, this spark from within, that stillness that we all enter and say these words out loud again, page 680. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart, does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound, a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. And breathe that in for a moment. And you can continuously repeat the words over and over again with the shorter version, the exclusive excerpt just for the this activation. Plasma, perhaps in continuation as we keep reading, can be imagined as interconnected fiber lines that hold the ebb and flow of everything, including that of photonic light. In the ascending body, ionization produces higher frequency plasma light for continuing to spiritually build this kind of fluidity. And you can also, at the front of the book, when reading a little bit about me, is the influencers that have taught me all these things that I've put together to read to you in this audio-visual version of my book. Names like Tesla come to mind. And when clearing these many fields, it can expand outward and take in more light. The clearer it can be, eventually it will ignite and radiate the plasma that will absorb and emit this light illumination from within. And breath. So breathe, and with every breath, just meditate into expansion. As a generator, the self can build the internal energy and balance by increasing the direct connection and to spark this plasmic sovereign light as being. The stronger it becomes, the less energy leaks it will experience. And for today, notice the different lights that we might emit, the different angles, perhaps even blockages, and that we illuminate as auric fields, our auras, as we might describe, and what realities we're experiencing from those vortices, from those nadis that attract to each other and create portals. So today, practice this depth of perception, and that every thought released can activate a loss or gain, and from this surrendering, a relief. So the more we try, and the more resistant we become to hold on to things, the more we will suffer and struggle and strife and all those other beautiful entanglements that we get ourselves into, called learning experiences. The physical body, when subjected to strong electromagnetic signals or activated primal life force, it is then capable of biological ionization that can generate plasma. The 0-point field of nothingness. Just go there and be here now within it. Let it consume you. And feel that sinking in feeling. Your presence here in this moment, where the stillness brings a calming feeling, encouragement of salt rocks and other such sultry Zen-like tools you can apply. Similar to smudging, and feel that grounding presence from within. Page 681. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. Think back to junior high school science class. Remember the different atoms holding their variables of protons, electrons, and neutrons? Protons being positive, electrons being negative, and neutrons being neutral. Each basic element, like oxygen, sodium, and potassium, that it consumes and consumed, and then to distinguish it from other elements. This is why it is always mentioned to drink lots of water so the kidneys can clear the electrolyte balance and the expelling of toxins that the system of its parts must always do as house cleaning. Food becomes digestible, and from these smaller molecules and elements, they can be used by the cells for energy and to create this process called cellular respiration. And I think that I'm running out of battery here. So I might have to continue on at a later date with, we'll just do as much as we can here and continue on to reading. So what we're trying to say here is all of these molecules and elements have the potential to create electrical impulses depending on the situations with the specific body systems at the time. And I think I might have froze, but I'm still going. Okay, so electrolytes crossing the cell membranes and creating electrical discharges is only one of the countless ways the physical body uses the food it eats and to create energy to power through. While this might not seem like the same electricity that powers the computer, at its core, it really is. And so the more cold it starts feeling right now, it's losing the battery. Oh, I gotta just really quickly read through this and we'll see where it goes. So the difference is the feeling of the experience and the perspective that it will use discernment to how it feels inspired and to expressively respond. Another prime example, and that has everything to do with life force activation, starting from the kidneys to the heart and then the brain. Page 682. And I think I'm going to continue on and make this a part 2 or B. Moving on to, we have three more pages. And so this activation, from primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting breath, and a beat of the heart does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. Another prime example. that has everything to do with life force activation, starting from the kidneys to the heart and then the brain. Electrical currents created by the body is the heart rhythm. The heart contains a grouping of cells that reside in the upper right portion known as the sinoatrial node of SA node for short. The cells within the SA node, pacemaker of the heart, contain electrolytes both sides and outside of the cells. Some of the most common electrolytes within the body, as mentioned previously, as sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and chloride. Sodium and calcium generally reside outside the SA node cells, and potassium lies within. These specialized cells allow much more sodium to enter the cell than allow the potassium to leave it. The result is a continually growing positive charge. Once that charge reaches a certain point, calcium channels open up in the cell membrane and allow for calcium to enter in as well. This makes the interior of the cell extremely positive, known as an action potential. Once that potential reaches a certain point, it has enough power or discharge down the nerves of the heart. All this information that has been imparted is mostly common within all the health sciences and as well as anatomy, physiology, textbooks, and so far as to reconfigure by the author of this book. That would be me. Most elements have the same number of electrons as they do protons. This will give it a balance between negative and positive charges. Protons reside in the nucleus center of the atom, while electrons rotate around the nucleus. And moving on to page 683. Interesting how electrons, they restrict their energy to specific levels known as shells. These shells allow for specific spaces between the rotating electron and center protons, sort of like how planets orbit at different distances from the sun. Since negatively charged electrons are attracted to positively charged protons, the further away from the center of the atom an electron is, the more loosely the electron is held to the nucleus, and the easier it is to knock that electron free of it. The need to reach a point where the spinning of the electron shells have to reach 0 point is the critical balance of the frequency within cellular level and the frequency of the electron shell. This is where the alchemical change takes place from a fixed linear dimension into a multidimensional. So to try and understand it from a linear perspective will take years. However, to experience this kind of shift can be as simple as clearing all the trauma and emotional baggage. Trying to understand it is not as important as the discipline it takes to go through the process and experience the results firsthand. And I'm still going here. Oh my goodness. So we can continue on. Although chemistry from high school could describe that ionic and covalent bonding, all compounds are equal. All compounds are equal and equal out from their exchange of energy. In short, energy is neither lost nor gained. Einstein had a great significance with the science of physics. His theories also had much to prove with alchemical relativity that had trickled into this book on the speed of light as constant. And as it being constant, the mass and energy are the same physical entities and can be changed into each other. In the world of metaphysics, life does not have to have a physical body or form that it can be made visible under the normal senses. No need to further explain from here on forward. And with that said, in continuation, page 684, lastly, from primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound, a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. There are many different sentient forms and or advanced consciousness life forms that exist, and in the states that are vastly unfamiliar. After the body in the physical is no more, the misty grayish blue translucent plasma from the soul will rise, and sometimes it can even take on the color of the auric field mentioned in the Bardo states of mind towards enlightenment. The spirit is made of water, and as it is, we consume most of our life. We depend on this thing called water, and because most of its life within the physical, this self, this body, it requires and made from mostly water. This misty film can be seen as a figure or an image, and from its previous apex of physical wellness, it can trigger the neuroplasticity of the brain, and within the memory to connect is made possible. However, not in linear time perspective, to perceive as distance and space width. The same as with the plasma being. Everything exists simultaneously, and this is a connection that transcends beyond the box of matter, space, and linear time. Distance will become irrelevant because the self with focus and intention can be anywhere and everywhere. So the purpose for today is to practice and maintain balance of the self in every way and any way conceivable. Then perhaps it will be ready to accept the plasma-based beings, and that they're everywhere and mostly can be felt rather than seen. And with that said, I'll leave you with today's activation affirmation. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart, does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound, a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. And take a nice deep breath in. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound, a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical. From primordial substance, my essence enters into a comforting beat of the heart does make, and thus possess a soul of its own. From the sound, a wild scream echoed its first breath into the physical.